صلى الله على محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم صلى الله على محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم صلى الله عليه وسلم.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وآله وصحبه ومن اهتدى بهداه أما بعد. The chapter number 39, and we have 6 hadith. It deals with the sleeping of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wa alihi wasallam. The first hadith was narrated by Al-Bara ibn Azim, may Allah be pleased with him. He said, when the Prophet of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam laid down to sleep, he placed the palm of his right hand under his right cheek and said, O my Lord, preserve me or protect me from your torment on the day when you resurrect your servants. So, رَبِّ قِنِي عَذَابَكَ يَوْمَ تَبْعَثُ عِبَادَكَ. The second hadith, narrated by Hudayfa, may Allah be pleased with him, he said that the Prophet ﷺ, whenever he went to his mattress, he would say, O Allah, in your name I shall die and I live. And when he woke up, he would say, praise be to Allah who has revived us after he caused us to die, and to him is the resurrection. All of these hadiths show us that the Prophet ﷺ was dealing with sleep as a form of worship. It's not just crashing down and hitting the sack and sleeping. This is a ritual where you have to do a number of certain acts, recite a number of certain du'as, recite verses of the Quran, surahs of the Quran, as a form of a ritual, a form of ibadah that you do for Allah Azza wa Jal. Mother Aisha, may Allah be pleased with her, says that whenever the Prophet ﷺ went to his mattress each night, he joined the palms of his hands like this. And then he breathed into them. He blowed into them. And then he recited into them the surahs of قل هو الله أحد, سورة الإخلاص, قل أعوذ برب الفلق, سورة الفلق, قل أعوذ برب الناس, سورة الناس. After finishing reciting the set of each surah, he would wipe whatever he can from his whole body, from the back, from the side, from all over the place. And then he would do this again, and then he would do this for the 3rd time, and this is all while he was on his bed. Ibn Abbas, may Allah be pleased with him, he says that the Prophet of Allah ﷺ slept until he started to breathe heavily. Some people say that he snored, and some people say no, the Prophet does not snore, but he breathed heavily, meaning that he was engaged in deep sleep. And he had gasped for breath while he was sleeping. So Bilal came to him and called him to the ritual prayer, to Fajr. Whereupon he got up and performed the ritual prayer, and he did not perform the minor ritual ablution. This is wudu, and there is a story behind this tradition. Now, the Prophet ﷺ went into deep sleep, and when notified by Bilal, he rose up and went to prayer. In a narration, Mother Aisha said, O Prophet of Allah, you were in deep sleep and you went to pray without performing wudu? How is that? We all know that sleeping nullifies the wudu. Here was the justification of the Prophet ﷺ. He says, O Aisha, I'm not like one of you. My eyes sleep, but my heart is awakened. So you guys, when you sleep, if you break your wudu, you wouldn't know, because you are deep asleep, while I would be aware of that because my heart is awake. Even if I am in deep sleep, if I were to break wudu, I would have noticed that and Allah would have notified me. So this was an exception for the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. Anas ibn Malik says, when the Prophet of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam went to his mattress, went to his bed, he would say, "Praise be to Allah, who has fed us and quenched our thirst and has sufficed us and sheltered us." Look at these four things. You go to bed acknowledging that it was only Allah Azza wa Jal who fed you and provided you with what to drink and provided you with a shelter and sufficed you and provided for you. You say this, you express your gratitude to Allah Azza wa Jal for how many there are without a provider of sufficiency and without a provider of shelter. This is how each and every one of us should be 24 hours, 7 days a week. Whenever you ride your car, acknowledge that there are so many deprived of this vehicle. Whenever you walk on your feet, acknowledge that there are so many deprived from the ability of walking. Whenever you are on your wheelchair, acknowledge that there are people who don't have arms to use their wheelchairs with, or they don't even have money to afford a wheelchair and they have to crawl on the ground. Everything that you are in at the moment is a favor and blessing from Allah the Almighty Azza wa Jal. And finally, Abu Qatada says, when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam alighted for rest at night, he would recline on his right side. And when he alighted for rest shortly before the morning, he would raise his forearm and place his head on the palm of his hand. What is the difference? Scholars say that nighttime sleep, the Prophet used to lie on his right hand side and go into deep sleep. But whenever the Prophet prayed night prayer and there was very little time to Fajr, or whenever it was between the adhan and the iqamah and he wanted to lie down, he used to raise his arms like this and put his head downwards while lying. So he didn't put his whole head on the ground or on his arm or hand. Rather, he raised his elbow like this and as if he was inclining on it. So he's not sleeping actually, he's just resting his body on this position. Why? Because if he didn't, he may have fell into deep sleep and those who follow him would fall into deep sleep and miss Fajr. So he wanted to give them the example of how to be quick to wake up and not to rest fully, so that they would not miss the major ritual prayer, which is Salatu al-Fajr. هذا والله أعلم ونسبة العلم إليه أسلم صلى الله وسلم وبارك على عبده ورسوله نبينا محمد.
صلى الله على محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم صلى الله على محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم صلى الله عليه وسلم